I believe we are recording or something similar to it, and so we've got us another episode of Dragging Up the Past here, and we've got something special tonight.
What?
And it's not Jim. Like Jim is always here. There's only so special Jim can be when he's always here.
Fair point.
But we do appreciate you, Jim. So thank you. And
Thanks, man.
and our special is not this wackadoodle cover art that we're looking at. No, our special thing tonight is we have a third voice on Dragging Up the Past. And so Byron, welcome. Byron, how are you?
Greetings. Thank you, everyone. I'm doing great tonight.
And so Byron is the first interloper to Dragging Up the Past, and the first Canadian. We'll go ahead and get both of those out of the way at the same time. And so we've got a Sasquatchian and an interloper all rolled into one.
Yeah. Well, I prefer to just to be known as a Yankee to a Yankee, which is how my Texan coworkers used to call me.
Well,
a Northerner to a Northerner, I think, is what they meant.
Yeah. I can see that as a characterization. I mean, leaving aside all the sociological implications of calling somebody a Yankee and that not necessarily being a good thing in my neck of the woods. We'll go with it. But we dragged Byron on tonight in part because this episode was his idea. He's the one that wanted to do Dragon number 39. And so this is all his fault. And so, if you hate this issue, blame him. Or blame me for acquiescing, or blame Jim just because he's Jim. All right, so Dragon 39, $3 sale price at the time, a little on the steep side. Jim, we're going to have women as players and characters, but I know you're looking even more forward to Evil with a capital E.
Yeah, I'm going to set somebody on fire.
Set Byron on fire. Invade Canada, right? Blame Canada. There you go.
That went poorly the last time.
Yes, it did. All right, so here's our artwork. We've got, I don't know, is this probably about 8th grade pencil sketch?
I don't know, but it's kind of scary. There's the lion thing that looks like it's French kissing the dragon. There's a hero that's come back from the hunt. And I think a dryad in the trees. This is one of those things that could have turned. This is why my mother thought Dungeons and Dragons was evil. This painting.
Yeah,
really,
I'm trying to figure
it was this painting.
I'm just trying to figure out exactly how many drugs was somebody on painting this thing.
No, come on now. This is much simpler to explain. This is just to your point. This is 8th grade, back of the notebook. The drawing. There's no theme here.
No.
The drawing never stops. I ask 3 particular questions. I'm assuming that's a Lemura at the lower right.
Probably.
I can't say for sure, but I'm going to guess. But that's not my question. These are drow. That's got to be a drow up in the top.
Well, so theoretically, yes, because I think the timeline probably works out that D123 had probably been released at this point. But even that, I'm not gonna guarantee.
Okay.
So
that's but she's riding a dragon.
Yeah. Well, just being above ground is going to make the drow a little complicated there.
Well, but then the real question is, what gives? I'm a little curious. What gives with the bees? Yeah,
that oversized bee down there in the bottom left. So
I'm just thinking the guy just couldn't stop.
Well, yeah. Look, the rabbit over on the right side. There's no good reason for a rabbit to be there.
Right.
You've got the dryad that's sort of sticking out of the tree where the arm and leg up in the top right. You've got the arm and leg coming out of the tree. That's one body, but then you've got another face sort of tucked into the tree to the right of that in the very corner. And I really hope down in the bottom left that's supposed to be some sort of rose with just bad definition on the petals, and that's not like a stylized cow patty. Because
I was wondering about that too.
Well, but in scale to the dragon, that's one hell of a cow. So, or this is a tiny ass dragon, or we've got a sprite riding an iguana. So it's sort of one or the other there. And then what's the whole sort of silver interlocking horns, or is that
Psionics.
Yeah, is that
That's-
psionic
Which
mind
I
control?
never played a campaign with psionics, so that's my explanation of it with it.
That's as good as any, dude. I mean, either that or we're defaulting back to drugs. So
Right. That is a yeah, you're right. I was going to say web, but you're right. It's too twisty, turny, bendy. All right.
I suspect that
yeah,
that's probably supposed to be some stylized representation of some kind of mind control, but to what end? So that he feeds the albatross in his hand to the dragon when he's done French kissing his little thingy there. Oy, oy, oy.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. Are you kidding?
Yeah. All right.
All right.
That's these are the things that get seized by the 4th grade teachers at Bay Harbor Elementary there, right? So, yeah. Excuse me, Ms. Jones, we need to have a teacher conference about some of the material your son's bringing to school. So, we're in July of 1980. It says so up there in the top corner. The Dragon magazine internal typography up in that top right, I think that's intentional. It appears to be, but it still doesn't appear to be very well typeset. That ICE ad, Jim, I know you like making fun of the ICE ads. In the past, we had noted the ICE ad having been typed with one of the typewriter balls from the old typewriter that you had learned to type on, where you swap out the font by changing the ball on the typewriter.
Yep.
Yeah, this wasn't a typewriter.
This was hand lettered.
Yeah.
Yep.
Byron, how many pages did you kill in your school notebooks hand lettering things like this?
I actually wrote an entire book report in the Dwarven runes from The Hobbit when I was in 6th grade, I think. So this kind of stuff I loved. I loved handwriting. I guess that's called typography, or that was called typography now, and now they call it fonts. Loved fonts, even back as a kid. So
yeah.
I looked at this and I think, this was all fun. This is all good for me.
Okay. I think turning in a book report in Dwarven Runes is kind of awesome. I'm curious if or how it got graded. Did you just happen to have the nerd that was possible of being able to read Dwarven Runes?
Yeah, so I learned the alphabet from Lord of the Rings, from The Hobbit, and my book report was on, you'll never guess, The Hobbit, and I handed it in, and my teacher gave me an A and then made me sit down and read it to her, because she thought, well, this kid just made it up. And after I was reading through the second paragraph without pause, as though I was reading real English words, she just said, stop there, and gave me an A. So, and I think I still have that thing somewhere in my parents' basement, I'm sure.
So it was actual Dwarven runes. It wasn't like English letters written to look like
no,
Dwarven.
it was the runes. Well, and I think it's the old Elvish runes that were on the map that the company of Thorn's company uses to find the Lonely Mountain.
That's
5 feet high the door. Yes, moon runes. Yeah, 5 feet high the door and 3 may walk abreast. All that stuff.
Nice.
So I took the passages and wrote it down, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. And I think, if I remember properly, I think I even did illustrations or illuminations in my book report, where I drew little pictures every now and then when something interesting happened.
Jim, I'm gonna on behalf of our audience, I'm going to ask the incredulous question I did not think was possible. Has Dragon Up the Pass now gotten nerdier?
Oh, I was thinking exactly that. I'm not kidding. I was sitting here going, holy cow, that's a whole new level.
It is, but there is backstory to this, of course, and that is that, first off, when I wrote that, I don't think I was playing Dungeons and Dragons at that time. That was grade 6 for me, so I don't think I quite yet discovered Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't know if Dungeons and Dragons. Definitely, this episode just got nerdier, but Maybe it's not.
Still got room to grow.
So, you and I are going to have a conversation that's apart from Brant for a second, just so we can square away. We got to figure out which one of the two of us is older. So when this comes out in July of 1980, where are you?
I'm in grade 19. I'm in grade 9. I'm in grade 9 at Louisville Junior High School in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Okay, so you and I are exactly the same age. That's okay. This is gonna be awesome. Yeah, because I am between because we have this in America we have this long summer break.
Right.
I am on my way to what we call ninth grade, which we call high school, as you probably know.
Yeah.
So we did the same. We did the same thing here.
So this is where I get to make fun of you guys. I was on my way to third grade.
Yeah, you can pound sand.
Yeah, so we're 65ers. We're 65ers, right?
Yeah. So this was our wheelhouse. This is what we had, and I'm just as you know, I always scroll a little bit ahead so I can point to the things I want to talk about. But oh boy, was the crew doing Dungeon or Dragon in my wheelhouse. I just never realized how much they were doing this because I'm not going to subscribe to Dragon for another 2 years. I brought my D&D books to the third floor gymnasium at the high school I went to. No, I did a freshman year, so I'm going to do it later in the fall. So I'm going to go out and get my first set, and we're going to start Keep on the Borderlands in just a couple months. But, man, you talk about a whole world that was traveling on parallel paths.
Yeah.
I've told this story before, I think, but I first saw D&D on an episode of 60 Minutes.
Right.
And it was all these college kids playing it. And my dad watched 60 Minutes like a religion. And he wanted to turn the channel because he didn't, what's this garbage? I want to hear, did somebody tell me more about the upcoming election? And I said, no, Dad, this is one thing I want to watch. And I made it a point to try and find out more about this. So this was a very good summer for me.
Yeah. I'm still a year away from picking up D&D at this point. So, but again, I'm a kid compared to you guys.
And I think I started playing 2 years. I think I started playing D&D maybe in grade 7 or 8, so 2 years before this, but not really. I lived in Calgary, Alberta at the time, which was maybe a city, I'm going to say, of 250, 300,000 people. So there wasn't really much of a group of people who did this, and certainly most of them who played were university kids or high school kids. So I didn't really even know about the Dragon magazine until maybe a year and a half of playing the game and starting to pick it up. So but this was the heyday.
I had to zoom in on this one just because everybody's going to chuckle over this. The Dragon computes. Recently, we've acquired a TRS-80 computer here at the Dragon. It's a level 2 with a 16K memory and a 16K expansion interface.
Hey, write this down. Hey, Dragon Magazine, suck it. My TRS-80 was better than yours. I had that exact. I was looking at that. I was almost getting ready to die. I had that exact machine. You just take the one thing I didn't have because that was expensive was the printer.
Yeah.
The printer was $1,000.
Yeah.
That computer. Kids, those of you who need to get off my lawn, that machine that you see spec'd out right there is $1,400 plus the printer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've already moved off of it there.
But that computer there with 16 memory, 16 expansion, 2 floppy disks, and a printer, that's actually closer to $2,500 with the printer.
Yeah.
$1,980.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of change. All right, let's go check out our contents. We've got a top secret module.
You skip past the other paragraph.
I did.
You can't do that to me.
Which one? The White Dwarf and the Wargamer?
Right under the one you just read, right under the one they just read, they are going to brag that not only is Dragon the sole North American agent for White Dwarf, it's the sole agent for the Wargamer.
Yes.
And we're saying the Wargamer is going to give strategy and tactics a run for the money, at least in the quality of game included. I don't think the Wargamer with game ran more than 6 issues.
And clearly they did not inspire S&T to up the quality of their included war games.
I'm running this Kriegspiel with Doug on the GrogHeads forums, and I'm pulling out every 1809 Austrian game I've got, and I pulled out the S&T pair of games that ran over 2 months. Oh my God, do the counters make your eyes hurt?
Yeah.
So this is folks. Once again, the Dragon is bragging about the fact that they're going to bring you quality hex and counter war games. That's so great.
It is great. All right, so the anti-paladin, women want equality, and why not? Some points to ponder.
That's so great.
We've got a cleric in there somewhere, up on a soapbox. We've got the 1980 convention schedule, so that'll be fun. The simulation corner, Redmond and Roger. So we're talking war game artwork.
Oh yeah.
And here, Jim, I'm going to make a prediction, and this probably would have been true even without Byron joining us. There is no way we are going to get through a sub-issue number 50 episode of Dragon Up the Past in under 90 minutes when it's this one. I just don't see that happening. We're going to try.
Give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot. Okay. All right, Jim. July of 1980. Have you done your research?
I'm ready.
I was stalling for you.
No, I've been good for a bit. I've been too obsessed with TRS 80s.
So here's the thing. I'm gonna I'm gonna miss the movie, but I'm pretty sure I've got. It's one of two songs. It's got to be one of two songs from this summer. It's either "Still Rock and Roll to Me" by Billy Joel or "Magic" from Olivia Newton-John.
Just
do I get to vote?
Yeah, absolutely you do.
You can jump in here.
I'm
so long as you haven't Googled it ahead of time.
Playing the Queen of Hearts by Juice Newton.
I think you're a year off on Juice Newton.
I think you are too, but man, that's not a bad guess either. Brant, you're right on both of them. Although to stay in July, it has to be "It's Still Rock and Roll to Me" from July 19th through the end of the month for Billy Joel, and then all of August belonged to "Magic" by Olivia Newton-John.
Okay, so I'm off by a month on Magic, but I've got half of July with "Still Rock and Roll to Me." All right, so what was the other half of July? And now I'm curious. What was the other half of July?
It was "Coming Up" by Paul McCartney.
Oh, good Lord.
A song that has not aged nearly as well as the other two.
Yeah, there's a reason you don't hear that one anymore. So, somewhere in there, Funky Town from Lips Inc. was in there somewhere also. But I don't know
Funky
that
Town
ever hit number
is
one.
June. You are rolling.
It hit number one?
It was indeed for another month, May 31st through June 21st.
So this summer was a summer I was doing a whole bunch of summer camp stuff at Fort Sill, where my father was stationed at the time, and they had a jukebox in there that you got 3 songs for a quarter, and those are the songs that I remember kind of taking over that summer. We'd spend the morning in the pool across the street, and then the afternoon kind of hanging out around the youth center there, where we had a variety of different games and bike rodeos and all the crap you do when you're in a summer camp in 3rd grade. But not really like a themed summer camp. It's just sort of glorified babysitting. But they had the 3 songs for a quarter thing, and those were the songs that I remember completely taking over that summer. So that's there's a reason I knew all the words to "Still Rock and Roll to Me" in 3rd grade. You know.
And now a sacred moment we have arrived at. The number one movie released in July. The July of 1980, I'm going to tell you, from our perspective as Grogs, and if you're of a certain age, was a pretty sweet month.
Big Red 1.
What was the number one movie released in that month?
Big Red 1. I don't know. I suck at the movies. We've well established that I suck at the movies. Byron, what do you think?
I would say Gremlins.
No, Gremlins like 5 years later.
Yeah.
I was in Germany when Gremlins came out.
Big Red 1 was released in July of 1980, but it grossed a grand total of $7 million. The number one movie with a bullet was Airplane.
Oh, okay.
Oh, of course. Leslie Nielsen, great Canadian.
Yeah, yes, he was. And but coming right out now it won by a distance, okay. But following up after it, Caddyshack,
Okay.
July 25th, and Cheech and Chong's next movie. I mean, that was a summer, boy.
So that's a summer full of movies that third graders aren't allowed to watch.
I snuck into all three at the our local shopping mall. Had a Tuesday thing, and I could catch a bus with my bus pass and go see movies for $1. And it never seemed like the nice old lady behind the counter was checking ID, because God knows I didn't look 18. So yeah, there are your movies, and
two classic movies that we still quote in daily, conversation, right? How many times have you ever heard someone say Cinderella story? Cinderella story.
Oh, of course. Oh, are you kidding? I walk around my office going fun, fun, fun. And the crazy thing, you do something like that, and you think people would look sideways at you. They'll look at you and go, "Oh, it's in the hole. It's in the hole." It's like a language for certain people.
Yeah.
So, again, of a certain age.
Yeah, that's well above the 40 line.
That's Airplane certainly is. I think Caddyshack has slipped down. I think young guys their dads are showing it to them.
Maybe.
I think in a lot of cases their dads are showing it to them, and I think Caddyshack endures of those two. But there's your pop culture for July of 1980.
All right. You have that Greyhawk with that cover there, didn't you, Jim?
Oh, well, you know why?
Because it was the only thing they had.
No, it was because it was approved for use.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I love that it had to be approved for use with AD&D by the publisher of AD&D.
Oh my God, the self-referential nonsense, or the self-important nonsense. This is approved for use. These others are not.
So not only did I have a copy of this somewhere.
Right. Right. We gotta get OSHA involved in this. You can't have people using unlicensed or unapproved fantasy world settings.
Yeah. So
so great.
So yes, not only did I have a copy of this,
this thing is so beat up, but it's still right over here on my shelf.
Yeah, I had a copy of some late vintage that I had acquired along the way, and our good buddy Wendigo sent me another copy in a giant care package of D&D stuff he sent to me when he was cleaning out the garage. So now I have two. So
that's awesome.
Which just means I'm a pack rat, right? I mean, that's the key thing there. All right, Jim, here you go. You ready? Why no RuneQuest? Although you claim the Dragon is an impartial magazine, why don't you publish articles on Chaosium's RuneQuest? It's because you're trying to cover up the fact that RuneQuest is the ultimate FRP game, that RuneQuest's combat magic and promotion systems so outclasses, that of AD&D's?
I think it bears mentioning that this is truly written by a guy named Doug McKenzie.
I was waiting for you guys to get to that. Yeah, we're going to pause and chuckle here for a few moments. So, yeah, there you go. Why no RuneQuest? What I also like is that the response, I mean, the thing itself runs 3 paragraphs in a pair of sentences. The response runs the better part of a column and a half. So, or most of a column.
Clearly, this is something that has been said to them many, many times before, and it makes them angry. And,
yes.
And as a result, because they're angry, they choose. And this is Kim, right? This is the head.
No, this is Jake. This is
okay.
This is Kim, not yet. This is Jake Jacquet. Kim is still an assistant editor.
No, but I'm saying Kim is responding because he signs it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's Kim that signs it, and he says he lies. He lies. If RuneQuest or Chivalry and Sorcery or Tunnels and Trolls or any other role-playing game ever surpasses D&D or AD&D in general appeal, the Dragon would not hesitate to shift its emphasis accordingly.
Provided, of course, that writers sent us manuscripts on those games.
That just isn't true.
Well,
This is a house organ, but from the beginning.
yes. That said, the point at which it sort of kind of became a little true, when Pathfinder kind of overtook D&D 3 and change, and then just obliterated D&D 4 in the marketplace. By then, the publisher of Dragon was the same guy, or the same guy's publishing Pathfinder, and so it didn't really matter. Oh. But yeah, the idea that Dragon is not a mouthpiece for TSR Hobbies or any of the games that company produces, come on now. Let's let's come back to reality. Let's stop living in the world of our cover art and come back to reality.
Yes.
So, yeah. All right. Well, I just thought you'd get a chuckle out of that one. Perhaps the reason there is no RuneQuest is that they write the most overblown and embarrassingly bad ad copy. Remember the magic written by practitioners of the old religion, the guys from SCA that were the combat consultants for the reboot of RuneQuest. All right, another chapter from Fantasy Smith's Notebook. Fantasy Smith's Notebook sounds like, that's where they kept their notes working on 50 Shades of whatever. But the systematic way to make finished figures. There we go.
Yeah, so this is an interesting article, partially because those illustrations were great, because it showed a guy like me, and we didn't have anyone to show us how to paint miniatures living in Calgary. I didn't know that guys played games that included this stuff. So when I saw people doing this stuff, I was like, wow, this is great. Look at all the steps that they're doing. We built plastic models, but had no idea that you could do highlighting and shading. But the article that accompanies this uses an industrial process called work in process. So they're basically saying, if you're going to paint miniatures, you should really use something, like we use in the Ford Motor Works company, and create a whip and track all your products all the way through their production. So I guess today they'd be doing Lean and Six Sigma or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the part okay. Let's back up a little bit. Let's have a quick honesty check here. You like this article because the figure's got nipples?
No, I liked the article at the time because people were doing things to figures that I was like, oh my God, you can cut pieces of metal off and re-glue. I had no clue that was available when I was in grade 8, grade 8, grade 9.
Yeah.
We just didn't have, yeah.
No, and that's absolutely right, because I remember when I first saw, I didn't start with fantasy, I started with Napoleonics. And I remember seeing the Napoleonic figures in books and on the tabletop, and I had no idea how to make them look that way. There were a few magazines you could sort of find maybe, but they were typically British. There certainly was no internet to go to. So yeah, an article like this that'll give you a few hints as to how to go from flash-ridden lead to a final product. Now, problem is, this is a whole lot of guidance for doing individual fantasy-type figures. Kind of sucks for historical, but better than nothing.
Here's what I'm getting a chuckle out of. We're not talking about character progression at all. We're not talking about, any sort of game stats, and yet we still have to have a chart with numerical quantifiers.
Right.
Sure, but that's a production chart, though. So that's, you create the level of production that you're doing. Like, are you a skill level? So imagine if you were actually previous production figures, so if you're doing 80 or more figures, maybe you need a work in process and your supervisor, floor supervisor, and have to work in shifts, right?
Well, I get all that. I'm just chuckling at the fact that we just kind of reflexively had to go ahead and throw in a chart just to have a chart.
Yeah.
So
that's who they are.
Makes it better.
But Brent, to your point though, I think about the comment about nipples. That point may come up later on in this issue as we look at one of the articles later on. So I have
no doubt at all. All right. At this point, Byron, you and I can probably just shut down for the next 3 minutes and let Jim kind of rail. And
Oh no, I mean, what? Anti-paladin. Okay. What is it? Conceptual. I remember this article. I was such a big paladin player that there were enough knob people who brought this article to my attention.
Yeah.
Trying to annoy me with it. And my comment 30 years ago, shoot, we're heading on 38 years ago now. My comment was, why are you just not creating an evil character? What about him makes him an anti-paladin? Everything you're going to do, everything you're going to create doesn't necessarily reflect being a paladin. He's just an evil dude.
Yeah. Well, so 2 things. First of all, the opening line, are the players in your campaign bored? You're a bad DM.
Right.
let's bury that. Now, second, the whole idea of the paladin being chaotic, the anti-paladin being chaotic evil, I've always had an issue with, because honestly, I think the anti-paladin would not be chaotic evil, would be lawful evil. Because the paladin part of this still kind of demands some sort of relative order out of the chaos, with them at a certain status level within that evil order. Much like the article we had a couple episodes ago where we had all the demons and devils in whatever various 9 levels of hell, there's a defined hierarchy and status that is inherent in where the paladin exists in society. So the anti-paladin would be an evil version of one of those. Like you said, it's an evil character. But I'm not so sure that it lends itself well to chaos. So,
so you know, his alignment is always chaotic evil without exception.
Yeah, I know. And my argument is, to be an anti-paladin, you would need to be lawful evil, not just any old kind of chaotic evil. Byron, any experience with an anti-paladin? Did you ever play one? Did you ever have one in the game?
So the answer to that is yes, we did have an anti-paladin, but it was a lawful evil fighter. And the reason why this was one of the articles that I remember reading this and having a long debate with some of my fellow gamers about, if in Dungeons and Dragons, religions are based on alignment, and it made sense there. And the paladin is a protector of the righteous for what we will just call those good religions. And we thought, well, why don't the bad religions have dedicated fighters that are donated or dedicated to protecting their faith or whatever it was? And if you read things like the old Conan books and things like that, there's always an evil temple and a bunch of acolytes that are defending the throne or whatever it is. And so when we read this, we liked it because we liked playing some of our guys. We had more evil characters in some of our campaigns than we did lawful, like good characters. We were more rogues and outlaws than we were, a bunch of do-gooders. So if we rescued the princess, we might actually sell her to another lord who would pay more money than bring her back to dad. That was the kind of guys that we were. So when I saw this, I thought, I remember seeing this article and thinking this was but of course this is an NPC as well, so it wasn't meant to be played as a character. But it was interesting because it tapped into an aspect of our gameplay that I thought, wow, other people are thinking this way too. It's kind of fun to be bad.
Yeah, we've discussed at some length on multiple other previous episodes of Dragging Up the Past that, yeah, they call these things NPCs, but let's be realistic about how many of these things the DM is rolling up and keeping behind the screen as just an NPC. Hey, you meet a really evil-looking dude, and they've got to figure out that he's an anti-paladin. No, this was straight up a way to try and test drive a new character class somewhere for somebody to take a look and go, oh, hey, we should do one of these. I also find it interesting that the Paladin is the one character class that gets a diametric opposite of the anti-something. There's no anti-thief, right? There's no anti-druid. There's no anti-ranger.
Yeah.
But we have an anti-paladin.
Yeah, and I'd agree, because the thing I didn't like about this article is that the name anti-paladin kind of said, why can't they call it something really cool, like a reaver or some other awesome evil name or whatever. And of course, if you read some of this, if you looked at fantasy art at the time, there was Frank Frazetta had that really famous painting. It was on the cover of a rock and roll album by a band called Molly Hatchet of the Deathbringer, the guy on the horse. That was an inspirational piece of work of art for me. And I remember thinking, the fact that you could play a character like that, and this was giving some framework for it, was kind of cool.
Jim's just ready for us to be done with this and move
Jim
on.
is grinding his teeth right now.
Well, no, I mean, I'm all up. That Molly Hatchet painting adorned many T-shirts and Vans too. But you can have those characters. That's fine. We're going to talk about that in the context of the next article too. I just don't think they're anti-paladins. Like you say, I just think there's something else. Call them that. Leave the paladin be the paladin. And to Brand's original point, if you're so bored with the standard stock of things that you're rooting around for this sort of goofery, well, then I'm going to blame your DM more than I'm going to blame the game itself.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair statement there. All right, so here we go, up on a soapbox. I want to make a note.
Article I've ever read in Dragon.
Before we ever touch anything in the article, I just want to note the problem of morality in fantasy. This is July of 1980, so this predates the term murder hobos by at least a quarter century. And now let us dive in.
This is easily the dumbest article I've ever read in Dragon. I don't know who this guy is. I would love to meet him. I'm sure he's about my age, I suppose. This is an intensely stupid article. This posits the idea that, it starts with a simple enough premise, which is, if you should be DMing in the world that your characters are in. That if you're in the realm of the Fae, that if you're in the realm of Fairy, the morality of that place is the morality you should be playing. And if you're playing it with the morality of your own world, the one your DM has, well, that's to distort the game. Well, I might dispute that. That's a point I either want to dispute or I find tedious. I can't decide which.
It could be both.
Yeah, but he then posits, as you read through this nonsense, if you go all the way to the very end, I'm going to find the original article that he's responding to here, because what he's talking about is that, it appears that this Larry DiTilio, who wrote the original article in Dragon 36, interesting that it took this long to get a response up, but it was to point out that when we're playing a game, we can sometimes be shaping our morality in the way we look at the world. It almost sounds like, well, if you do evil things in a role-playing game, you might wind up doing evil things in the real world. Or if you're constantly being virtuous in a role-playing game, you actually might become virtuous. And there's an obligation on the part of older players to make sure that they're being directed in a particular way. To make sure that older players are helping young players do whatever. This paragraph, the very last one, will stand out as a grown human wrote this down. Finally, Mr. DiTilio calls upon older players to teach younger players and therefore by improved play. I do not share his faith. I am not overly impressed by the morality, holiness, or sacrificial love embodied by my life or those of my contemporaries. Okay, fair enough. I hang out with GrogHeads. God bless you all. But I do believe that as we struggle to discover the reality of fairy, pause. Moving on. And the proper forms of fantasy, pause again. As we design game mechanics which are true, third pause, to those realities. Fourth pause. We will discover our souls. We will make ethical decisions. We will be transformed. I am going to write Douglas P. Bachman. I suspect his address is Van down by the river.
You know, for all the pauses you put in there, you could have just done your best Christopher Walken impersonation.
What? Who wrote this? The you know, this guy, this Larry DiTilio, appears to have written a piece that he said, look, be careful what you're doing in games. You know, if you got a kid in the group, don't be doing dirty sexual things. Matter of fact, how about you keep sex out of it? That'll be fine. If you're trying to have a game with kids in it, or younger people, all this other stuff. You know, a banal point, but that's fine. I guess I'm going to check out exactly what he said. But to go from that basic premise to the reality of fairy and the proper forms of fantasy, capital F.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. This guy got how many column inches in Dragon? Oh wow.
Well, because nobody was sending in RuneQuest articles. That's why.
That's well, you know what? Oh, Brent, what a great point. Had I noticed this in July of 1980, and I would have felt exactly as I do right now, just would have been able to elaborate it as well, I would have sent in a RuneQuest article and goes, please never publish a Douglas P. Bachman article again. If ever you feel the need to, call me, and I will send you a RuneQuest article.
There you go. And probably would have been more effective anyway, so...
And you know that this article is going to incite a whole flurry of letters and counter editorials and counter letters from other Douglas P. Bachman-like people in future issues of the Dragon.
So really,
I haven't looked at those issues yet, but I bet you it's going to happen.
So here's the real question: Is this just an analog troll?
How do you not think that?
I don't know. See, I think the thing with internet trolling is it's pretty easy to write a troll comment in a forum because you just sit down, you pound on your keyboard for maybe a minute and a half, and you say, yeah, all Canada sucks, and you're done. Right? And you don't sign your name to it, or you sign your name Jack Nasty Face, like I am on the forum, and you're done. This guy had to write this probably on a typewriter, had to edit it. You know, there were times where he used that little whiteout tape or whatever he did to correct his errors and sent it. This is well thought out. He thought about this. He pondered what his argument. I don't think he's trolling. I don't even know if there was an early version of trolling compared to what we have today. So I think this is really him thinking about the platform of role-playing games and what it means to be a role-playing gamer at this very early stage of the hobby, when people were still trying to figure out what it was, right? When we're still trying to figure out what is Dungeons and Dragons and why do we play role-playing games? Because let's face it, the game isn't that old at this time.
It's not a decade old.
It's also, and it was a different kind of experience. Like no one played Monopoly thinking, oh, well, this is what real estate development is really like. And no one played Risk thinking, oh, well, there you go. The secret to winning is just take Australia. But there were people who played D&D.
The Imperial Japanese Navy thought so.
Yeah, exactly. There were people who... D&D was one of the first games I played that actually became personal, that you had to make character choices, of course. And... well, actually, Gunslinger was the first game that I played that forced me into that. Or Boot Hill, I'm sorry, was the first game that made you do this. And so I think this is part of the reason why this stuff emerges at this time, because it's, you're not commanding an army of little wooden blocks on a Risk board. You are somehow making a decision that is supposed to reflect something, but we don't really know what.
Yeah.
And which is why I think these guys are going crazy at this point, because it's still... This is like early Christianity. What is Christianity? I don't know. It's whatever the Romans aren't doing, right?
Right.
It's that. It's like counterculture almost.
Well, I do find it interesting that he's talking in this pull quote down on the bottom of the second column. If someone uses a fantasy game or novel as a soapbox or a pulpit, that person has turned a form of art into a form of propaganda or pornography. Interestingly enough, his comparison with pornography, Jim, as you were talking about this whole idea of relative morality, what is moral is for the type of game you're playing. That's the same, basic community standards argument we have when trying to judge whether or not something's considered pornographic or prurient or whatever for the purposes of illegality. We have this community standards test that people have established in the courts. And really that's what he's talking about is what are the community standards of the game you're trying to play, and is that appropriate, or is there some sort of overriding universal morality? And to me it all comes back to, can we just roll some dice, please?
Well, and to Byron's point, and I think this is important, I forever excoriated games like Diablo and I suppose to a certain extent Descent very early on, but this goes back really before Descent. The real hack and slash dungeon crawl games. And I thought, and I remember thinking, oh, well, if Mr. Gygax and Mr. Arneson only knew what you were doing. And then I read an article with Gary Gygax where he went, no, what we had in mind was basically Diablo.
Yeah.
It just, let's go out there. Oh, yeah, we'll have a story. There'll be a story told by some guy with a bad Sean Connery accent. And stay a while and listen. We'll do this story, but then we're going to go down and we're going to beat some bad things. And we'll become more powerful and beat some bigger bad things. And boy, oh boy, will we have a great time. That was it. And it's only as people started to go, hey, wait a minute. We could inject moral choices in here. We could have whole conversations. We could have whole moral universes. That these sort of issues, in apparently very awkward and, in my mind, ill-judged ways, come out like this. I mean,
before you know it, you're playing
right.
BioShock.
Right, and there certainly would be. There are many role-playing games that come after D&D. The one that I can't get out of my head is Vampire.
Yeah.
Which deals almost exclusively with story and choice and things like that. But at this point in time, this is a very early stage. So, no, I just the thing that bothers me, the thing that really sets me off and makes this a rare case of, I was coming up with a bad word, but just a weird piece of nonsense, is this idea that there is going to be natively a morality that evolves from fantasy. That there will always necessarily be an inherent morality that is not a creation of the game, the DM and the players. I think that's simply nonsense.
Yeah, and particularly, look, I've read some of the old English, let's call them fairy tales, so we don't offend anybody, although I probably just did. I've read the Mabinogion. I've read some of the other Old English stuff in the original Old English back when I was in college, because I was way too nerdy back then and taught myself a bunch of Old English. I've read lots and lots of Greek and Roman myths, and look, if we're talking about the morality of the fairy, all right, we're going to have some issues with morality there. All right, let's...
And I will make a final comment here. That little highlighted comment says that if someone uses a fantasy game or novel as a soapbox or pulpit, I would say that, in my opinion, I actually think some of the best works of especially science fiction are when someone uses the book or their format as a soapbox or a pulpit. I mean, Starship Troopers, Heinlein and Starship Troopers, or Joe Haldeman and Forever War. I could go on about the Bradbury's 451. These are books that have, these are guys getting up on a soapbox saying things like, I think burning books is bad.
We could do an entire episode on the moral lessons of Heinlein.
I wouldn't call Fahrenheit 51 propaganda or pornography. I truly wouldn't.
Yeah, we could do an entire 90-minute episode on the morality introduced in various Heinlein books. So, not just Starship Troopers.
Right.
All right, we've given who is this Douglas P. Bachman way more attention than he deserved. The Barbarian North and the Youth of the Ulut Wolfheart.
Sure, you bet.
Yeah, I think the Barbarian North, isn't that Canada still?
Yeah, still
back
yeah,
in 1980.
Well, you're up there. Yeah, you're up there lurking quietly and yet smilingly. That's why we don't trust you.
I'm not sure it's still not the Barbarian North. So I get where they're going with some of these things, with some of the background they're trying to give you, and it is cool that they are attempting to give you a good variety, nice backstory, nice sort of a new world or new part of the world in which you can play. And so this is kind of cool, especially as early on as this was, when we hadn't fully statted out basically every historical moment of every historical period we could possibly imagine. Never mind having modded them into civilizations for our Civ games on the computers. This is kind of nice. I think the artwork is actually pretty. I mean it is primitive but intended to be so because it fits the feel of the article, which I think is pretty cool. Overall, look, there's not a lot of game stats in this, but the idea of this as sort of a backstory or legend that you can weave into your game, this was fairly well done, and especially at a time in which these things didn't exist. Kudos to G. Arthur Rahman for knocking this out. This is kind of well done. This is kind of neat. So. Strategy and Fantasy World, Centers for the Wargamer, Fantasy Gamer, and Miniaturist.
I only want to draw attention to that first paragraph because, boy, aren't we all tired of shopping mall hobby stores that are so busy selling frisbees, skateboards, and posters of Miss Piggy that they can't help you decide which game you want to try next. Yeah, I am. Gosh, no.
I will say, so in defense of the shopping mall hobby store, the mall was much more enjoyable when there were hobby stores in the shopping malls. I do miss Jim up there in the not quite all the way to the north, and Byron all the way up there in the north. Do you guys get the pop up stores, the game stores around Christmas? The guys that do Go, it's the store is called Go with an exclamation point. They're related to the calendar guys. It's the same parent company.
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the greatest deals you can snag is to go hit that store on December 27th when they've got everything marked down to half price or cheaper. I got my new copy of Dungeon and my new copy of Kingdom Builder, both in shrink, together were $15 during one of those we don't want to take the inventory home sales. So, I mean, Dungeon alone new off the shelf is like $30. Kingdom Builder runs 50 or 60. I got the both of them together for 15 during one of those closeouts. So I don't mind the shopping mall hobby store when I know what I'm looking for. So I'm okay with that. Okay, guys. At this point, we're gonna let Byron take over.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna grab a beer.
Yeah. Well,
I'm gonna grab some popcorn.
Sure. The question I was going to ask when I saw this was, have either of you guys ever played a female character in a role-playing game?
Pen and paper or online?
Oh, I guess pen and paper.
No.
Jim, was that a role-playing game, or was that another kind of role-playing?
Oh, sorry. No, I was actually thinking of both EverQuest and Dark Age of Camelot, where I have played a female character.
I was
online.
Online, yeah.
I had to take over a female character one time for a player who was not there, but not really played a female character for any extensive period of time. The one I get a kick out of is, as other minorities have done throughout history, female players of D&D, AD&D, and other role-playing games are finding it necessary to cope with discrimination and prejudice as they seek the satisfaction and fulfillment they are entitled to receive from playing a role in an adventure game. Just that one sentence alone.
I mean, let's just look at it. It's such a tricky word because I'm making, maybe I'm just being that grammar bad guy here, but I suspect the demographics haven't shifted much. They aren't now, and women weren't then, strictly speaking, a minority. I understand the point they're making, but
Yes.
they have been and remain a majority of the human population.
But a minority of the game playing population.
Well, but that's not what they're trying to say.
No, it's not what they're trying to say.
Because they go down and make a rather bold statement that I think is false. They say that they estimate, because they only comprised roughly 10% of all D&D and AD&D players, I think in July of 1980, that's a wild overestimate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I'm pretty sure that's high. So just going back to the very first sentence.
Sure.
Female players of D&D, AD&D, and other role-playing games are finding it necessary to cope with discrimination and prejudice as they seek the satisfaction and fulfillment they are entitled to receive from playing a role in an adventure game. It's 38 years later, and has it really changed all that goddamn much?
Oh, Jesus Lord.
Sorry, I had to go there, but look.
Even though they are now increased, I don't know as it's come to 50-50, but as I'm watching the Gen Con feed, we're recording this as Gen Con is firing up. It's finished its first full day. Man, there's a lot of... Look, I've been going to Gen Con. If you've listened to this podcast, you know it. I've been going to Gen Con for... my streak was something like 27 years when I finally broke it. And...
You go back to single-digit Gen Cons, don't you?
Yes, I do. Women started showing up very late in the process. They showed up typically with boyfriends and for the shopping side of it. And that's not the sexist shopping side. I'm just talking about because there were items there they could buy that they would want. There were things there they wanted to buy, not to play games. That, of course, now has radically changed. Now they are full-on, full-bore, guns-blazing gamers. I think that's great. However, it is a change. Answer your question. Let's see. Do they cope with discrimination? Yes. Do they cope with prejudices? Yes. And are some guys that are out there in the gaming universe full on tools? Yes. Those are my answers.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not sure it's gotten any better in the last 38 years because, and you know, we mentioned this a few minutes ago, the push-button publishing world we live in of you know, instant assholism online, and with virtually zero social repercussions, you know, I'm not sure it's gotten any better in 38 years, and that's a powerful and painful thing to say, but I don't know that. I mean, if we go talk to some of the women, I'm not sure we're wrong. You know, look, we've had them on the GrogCast. We had a whole GrogCast on women in wargaming, not role-playing gaming, but in wargaming, and they openly talked about some of the prejudices and problems that they faced. Friend of the GrogHeads, Katie Adley, had a problem this past summer at Gen Con, and has had plenty of problems online with her Twitter feed with people DMing her and harassing her.
Just unfortunately, it wasn't Gen Con, it was Origins.
Did I say Gen Con?
You did.
I'm sorry. I meant Origins. Because Gen Con hadn't happened. is only just now happening. So, yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to say Gen Con. I meant to say Origins. You know, we had the big article, it's been 2 years at this point, on the, you know, gaming has a white male terrorism problem. And everybody wanted to yell at that girl for over-exaggerating and, you know, she's making it up and, oh, my God, how could it possibly be? She won a flippin' court case, you know, proving that she was dealing with sex-based discrimination in her workplace at the game store where she won a court case. She had sufficient evidence to win in court, and we still have people saying that this isn't happening and it's not a problem. You go pound sand, guys. Quit being assholes. And again, it's I think it's gotten worse because there are no negative social repercussions to being a dick online. And that's, in case the passion isn't coming through sufficiently, it really bothers the hell out of me. That you've got guys that can be such open trolls and open jerks. And I dare say it was less of a problem back in the days of Dragon 39 because you had to be in the same room with somebody to be a jerk to them. And if you try to be a jerk to somebody in the same room, guess what? You're in swinging distance. And today, somebody mouths off online or decides to turn into a troll online. I don't have any way to just walk over there and smack the guy at the side of the head. You know, there was one guy I was very tempted to do that to at Origins back in about 2008, 2009, over by one of the minis games when he decided he was going to stand a little too close to one of the women playing in the game. You know, a couple of people had to say something to him. They finally got security involved. I don't think it's gotten any better, and that's a really sad thing to say 38 years later.
Well,
So.
I would say that there's a little bit of I don't know fractioning going on. My daughter has played a all-girl DM campaign with an all-girls with 4 girls in her party. She was the DM, and I've been to a couple conventions where my daughter and I will play a game, and there'll be usually 1 or 2 other women at the table as well. And but as a hobby, if you will, or as an industry, that I would tend to agree with you. There's a friendly local gaming store where they play games all the time there, and there isn't that problem that occurs. But because it's an intimate environment, and I think back in the day, it was hard just to find 5 guys in my community who could get together and play this stuff, and not and have a civil conversation, for 2 hours and enjoy a game. So.
Yeah, I wanna throw 2 things out here real quick, and then I'll cede the floor to you guys to decide if we want to keep talking about this or move on. One of them is for anybody that's played Card Hunter on online. So Card Hunter, for those of you that don't know, has a very old school role playing theme to it, but it's a bit of an online grinder kind of a game where. It's a square grid. You're moving your character around in there. It's a lot of hack and slash combat. Your cards kind of determine what's happening each turn, and you get different cards in your hand based on the weapons and equipment you're carrying. I reviewed it for the website back in 2013-ish time frame. It is a fantastic game. The original campaign, the way it's built, is such a great throwback and homage to the exact period of time we're talking about in here of when when players are sitting around the table playing, and the artwork and the stylized nature of it all is what we grew up with, we as the guys on this video. As you're playing the campaign, there's the story of your characters developing in the campaign, but there's also the cutscene story of Gary, who is your game master, and his older brother Melvin, who's kind of a tool about things, and Melvin sort of lording some things over Gary about how he's GMing stuff. But also Gary's got a crush on the pizza girl. What Gary doesn't know is the pizza girl's a Card Hunter player, and she actually steps in as your GM for a handful of adventures because she delivers a pizza, sees you playing Card Hunter, and wants to join in, and Gary has no idea how to react. And let's face it, at the time this article's coming out, which is the period of time that Card Hunter's trying to evoke, if a girl showed up and wanted to sit in the D&D game, around the ping pong table out in the garage, how many of us would have known how to react? There was definitely some adolescent awkwardness piled on top of the inherent geekiness of the hobby. And so anybody that's played Card Hunter kind of gets to see this a little bit in action. And then Gary realizes, oh, she just wants to play a game and have a good time. And it all sort of works itself out through that positive reinforcement. The other thing I wanted to note real quick as we're talking about this, today, we're recording this on the 2nd of August, themarysue.com published an article, What It's Like to Be a Woman Playing Dungeons & Dragons on the Internet. So there's lots of folks broadcasting their D&D games on Twitch. Look, Will Wheaton broadcasts his on TBD Network that you can get over the air on TV. And they talk about some of the harassment and idiots that they deal with online just trying to play role-playing games and share their hobby as they're broadcasting it. And so again, 38 years later, we've got all these great and wonderful communication tools, and we use it to be able to be an asshole from a distance. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now before Mr. Bachman comes after me, and I'm going to cede the floor to you guys. Jim, look, you're married to a gamer.
Mm-hmm. No, and she was a gamer back in this era. She's one of this small percent, but she liked painting minis and telling the story and playing with a bunch of guys. And so she was doing this in the mid to late 80s, into the 90s. But I guess the main point, well, I'll make 2 points. Number one, and it's a simpler one, is they make a comment in here about the miniatures, and I know you were talking about the exposed breasts on the minis. I'm not a prude in any way, shape, or form. I just don't care, really. There are figures in the Conan board game, as it came out, that never should have been released.
Yeah.
Correct.
Somebody should have had the courage or the common sense to go, you know what? No. Mm-mm. And I'm not talking about just because you don't want kids to see them, although you don't. They're offensive. And that ties into the whole thing about, well, one day women will actually get armor the way guys do. So there's that point. But this arc is tough. The comparison you're asking to draw over 40 years is tough, because it was such a small group of women that were participating 40 years ago to now, when they are very much a vibrant part of what we're doing. In fact, I think part of what has so disconcerted some of the people that have been in it the whole time is that they are showing up in their numbers. I mean, we played for years and years and years, and there were no girls around. And suddenly they are. And they're coming with a bright, shiny face, and they're like, they got a bag of dice and a big thing of rules, and they know the rules better than we do. They say, hey, I want to play too. And, yeah, we got to stop scratching and farting and doing all that other stuff guys will do when they're with guys. That's not it. We also got to think about, how we interact when we're around other people. And sometimes we resent that, and sometimes we act very, very badly. But I will say, I have never, not ever, seen this sort of misbehavior. And that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I believe it does. But I flatter myself to think that people who know me know that if you pulled that nonsense around, okay, well, you're on a timeout, and you're not going to play for the next 2 weeks. Go home.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, my final point. I hate this quest for rules that we've got about this. There is so much common sense that's being left to the side. We want these overarching principles, or we want to establish guidelines. Cons now are killing themselves to try to publish rules that people will find acceptable. I write laws for a living. That's my job. You can't legislate human morality and behavior. You can't do it. It's too fluid. And I don't mean that there isn't right and wrong. There absolutely is. But when you try to screw down what you mean by things like, well, don't say things that'll make someone uncomfortable. Well, what the hell is that? You can't write that law. You can only see it in the moment and have the moral courage to go, do you just see what you said did to her or to him? Do you just see how you excluded someone from the group? That has to be in the moment, and it has to come from individual moral courage. The idea that you're going to write rules, laws, regulations, guidelines, whatever you want to call them, to deal with that's chimerical and is nonsense. It simply has to come from, as I say, gaming and gamers finding a moral center.
Well, and we ran into this quandary when we were first setting up the GrogHeads forums of exactly how much of a code of conduct or behavioral standard do we want to try to establish in writing. Because quite frankly, one of the problems we had at the old country, the site which has now evolved into something completely disconnected from what it was when we were there. people tried to establish hard and fast rules, and you always got that one jerk that kind of stands right up next to the line and just tries to stick a toe over it, and just how hard are you going to smack those folks down? And, well, but the rule doesn't say I can't do this. And, it's kind of like the kids in the back seat, well, I'm not touching you, but the hand's right in the face. That we finally just wrote, in our rules, rule number 3 is don't attract the moderator's attention in a negative way. It's kind of the same thing with this. Don't be a dick. And it's amazing how much people try to justify being a dick with, well, the rule doesn't say I can't be no, you're being a dick. Just stop being a dick. And we'll get along fine. Just don't be a dick. So, high degrees of frustration there. But, Byron, you've got a daughter that actually plays and has to deal with this. Or I hope doesn't have to deal with this.
Okay, so my daughter started playing D&D a couple years ago, and she played with a group of guys first, and that ended up, and it was, watching those guys play was very much like watching me and my friends play, only there was a girl that was DMing it. So if it's all kinds of, shooting arrows at each other as soon as a guy makes an inappropriate joke or ribs him about something. So it turned into craziness, It really wasn't a lot of fun for her. Then she set up a game session with a bunch of her girlfriends. And I got to tell you, those girls were far more intuitive and far more into role-playing than the guys were. They really understood that this is a character and we have to find out. They almost played every step of the game as though it was a mystery, like they're trying to find something out here. The guys were more sort of like, let's just shoot at something, or let's go beat it up, or they would, one guy would run away like the old Monty Python movie, and which would make everyone else mad, so they'd start shooting arrows at him. So it was always controlled mayhem with the boys. The girls were extremely intuitive, but those girls kind of faded off in the distance for a while. And then she started up with a new group of gamers that included both boys and girls. And she left that group after 2 or 3 sessions because she said, all the guys want to do is they just want to buff their characters. So buff meaning, overpower them. And all their characters, like she said, we're playing a level 1 campaign, and 3 of the characters have scores in the low 20s. Like at a level 1, like an ability score, have a low 20. So like this guy's got a strength of 20 and intelligence of 20. So she kind of looked at that as being, there wasn't the kind of gaming she wanted to do. So she left that group and hasn't returned since, but is still looks at those books on her bookshelf.
Yeah. We mentioned the figures up, a previous page above us. There's a Kickstarter. It's either just finished or very close to, for female figures in realistic fantasy clothes. And yeah, okay, we can make fun of all the realistic fantasy clothes jokes we want, but the fact that it's women that aren't in chainmail bikinis, we had to run a separate Kickstarter for this because nobody would bother to create them otherwise. Come on, guys. So, go ahead.
And it is one of the things I think where the game has at least embraced, the latest edition of the D&D rules. There are no penalties to play. Women and men characters are exactly the same, and it's great to see that. Whereas, in the edition of AD&D that they're talking about here, women had a -1 on their strength roll.
But in fairness, and my wife wears the shirt to this day, the shirt just reads -1 ST +1 CHA.
Right.
Yeah.
It was and she bore with that, and it was a joke, and but here's the other thing. Again, with the sense of pay attention. If somebody's fine with that, do it. If not, change the stinking rule.
Exactly.
Just say, or if you really want to roll with it, give her an extra strength. It's your game. Don't let don't let the Wookiee win. I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move off of this because Jim's gonna have a field day with this part. The 6th annual Strategist Club Awards for Creativity in Gaming.
write this down. I have all of them.
I am not the least bit surprised.
I have all of these games, and there it is. There it is in '79. I mean, look, every one of these games. I mean, Junta's okay. It's been redone and it's better now. But oh my goodness, Awful Green Things, Divine Right, and there it is, Dune. My Dune is original. It's beat to heck. But a new one still is a fortune. It amazes me nobody's ever re-released it. It must have to do with the Dune rights, I presume.
Yeah.
But that's a lot. And by the way, I have Stars and Bars. I have Sword and Flame, which I forgot was Yakinto.
I was about to ask if you had Stars and Bars because I was pretty sure you had the other three.
Oh yeah, because Stars and Bars came out when the guys at Empire, who of course did Empire, the seminal Napoleonics rules, said, well, we can't let these Johnny Reb guys run away with everything, so we're going to try to really junk up the Civil War. And boy, they're a horrible set of rules, but I've got them, and and there they are, System 7 Napoleonics. God bless them.
Yeah. So I do find it interesting. There's not the last time we looked at this for the Strategist Club Awards for creativity in gaming, there
in
were
quotes, by the way.
Huh?
In quotation marks.
Yes.
By the way.
Yes.
It's not really creativity in gaming, just something like it.
Yes. There were more categories than this.
Yes.
So, again, we're still not 100% sure what the Strategist Club was, but there it is. All right, we're gonna keep moving because we're on. What are we on? We're on page 20 of like 70, and we're an hour into this.
Oh, we better go. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna skip Lehman's Tiny Hut. Sorry, we're bailing right past it. Next time, try a cleric.
Oh, I hated the stories.
The fiction.
The fiction and the dragon. Never read any of them.
There were a couple that were okay. By and large, there's a reason they were in Dragon and not in like an actual book somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, book.
I will say this. I don't care who wrote this fiction. It can't be worse than the artwork.
No. and too many of these stories dragged on for a couple pages, and then it turned into be a Shaggy Dog story with a punchline at the very last sentence. Go to the last sentence and see what the last paragraph is, and I bet you it's some kind of witty punchline.
I don't know. I'm too busy being distracted by the Nebelwerfer over here. Right?
Yeah,
the first playable hidden movement system for board games.
No, and you know what? I'll tell you something. I'm looking at that's pretty sweet.
I like that it does stacking.
Yeah.
Right. That's actually pretty creative. And I don't know if you guys know this, but right at the same time was when this company produced the magnets that you could slide these chits into.
Yep.
Yeah.
And put your map up on the wall, and then use that. That's how I played diplomacy all through grad school. Yeah. And those magnets, if you have some box, those fetch a pretty penny because for whatever reason nobody's ever bothered to try to replace them. Yeah. And by the way, your answer, Byron, is right there. What's the last line? It's right above the Nebelwerfer.
Oh. Sorry, I'm already on the next page.
Oh, no, he's already on the next thing.
Tell me, do you offer a group discount?
Right, there you go.
It's got a rim shot at the end.
Yes.
Well done on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was already on the next page because I was already down here to Cross the Bright Face Mission on Mithril. Here's the thing with this. The GDW tag, the GDW information, is the very bottom of the ad, and it is in the smallest of all of the typefaces used anywhere in the ad. And yet, simply seeing the combination of that artwork and that typography, you're looking at that and going, yeah, that's GDW. Like, you don't even have to see a company logo.
100%. As a matter of fact, I'd almost certainly bet it was Traveler.
It is. It is. But their visual design was such that
and
it was unified through time and space. So it was well done there. Giants in the Earth.
Can you download a Traveler font?
Oh, that the across the bright face font there.
Yeah.
It's close
I
to
bet you can.
the Pinot interface, but font. But I'm sure somebody's created a Traveler font in there somewhere. Go to whatthefont.com.
Font nerd.
Huh?
Font nerd.
Font nerd. Whatthefont.com also works. So.
You are such a font nerd.
Yes, I used to teach graphic design in college. What do you want? I used to give my students an assignment to go out and.
It's almost like I gave Byron $1 to ask you that question.
No. Well, Brant, we're going to have a bonding moment here. When I was in university, I did layout for the Gauntlet magazine, which is University of Calgary student paper. Back in the day, and then later on for a couple of music newspapers, when you had to, you printed out your article, and then you ran it through that wax machine, and you laid it up on those big boards. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I only had to do like one or two of those before I ended up doing most of mine digital. So.
Yeah. So I was old school. We actually had X-Acto cutting boards and X-Acto blades, and you moved your article around physically on a large plastic board, and then you sent that off to the printers.
Yeah, where they took a picture of it. No, I used to give my students an assignment to go run around town and identify the typography and fonts used on a variety of signs around the town. So that was always entertaining. Giants in the Earth, classic heroes from fiction and literature. So what is nice about this is that they're actually using classic heroes from sort of traditional folklore and fiction. We're not just ripping off somebody else's IP and not compensating them for it, which we've run into on other episodes. There's your Norse runes.
And some of those are remarkably similar to Dwarven runes, I will say that.
You don't say. Wait, you mean the D&D dwarves were influenced by Norse mythology and not Tolkien?
Yes, possibly. Well, I think the Norse probably riffed on Tolkien. I think it's the other way around, wasn't it?
No, Jim and I made fun of this before, where Gary was trying to insist that the elves and dwarves in D&D were not a direct ripoff of Tolkien.
No,
it's just scary stuff.
Inspired by. It's based on a true story.
There you go. Based on a true, right?
Any similarity to any.
As Bachman tells us, the reality of fantasy.
Yes, there we go.
As Bachman teaches, I'm using that.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Is there such a thing as a lawful neutral paladin? We have a dwarf who is one.
This second question, I am finding this article. I'm cutting it out. I am printing it at my office at work at City Hall, and it's going to be there for everyone to see. I wish it to be read aloud.
You're going to enter it into the official county archives, huh?
Yes, city, but thank you. No, there is no such thing as a lawful neutral paladin. Fine. And for that matter, there is no such thing as a dwarven paladin. All paladins must be human and must be lawful good in alignment. Book closed. Moving on.
QED.
QED. Thank you.
Oh, there were lots of miniatures. Let's take a look at the girls in this one.
Oh, we have girls.
Oh yeah, we do. There. We do.
Yeah.
Embarrassingly bad ones. There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. We also have a crap ton of white space because we really suck at paste up and forgot to put something in there.
And there's a bunch on the next page too.
Yeah, there's this one with her boobs hanging out because that's going to strike terror into the hearts of the opponent.
And I think there's one below as well.
Yeah.
Well, she's an Amazon. She's an Amazon.
She can't be. She's got both breasts.
There. Yes. Oh, good reference there. Yes. And it looks like there's a Hebrew scholar below her.
Yeah.
that honest to God is.
So here's the question: Is this a male or female skeleton?
What fig is this? What is this, Moses? Because he's got a kippah.
Yes.
I have far too many Orthodox friends for whom I now have a figure I have to find.
Yeah, I know. I feel right now like Captain Kirk in that episode where they're hitting him with that mind control device. These too many jokes must resist.
I
must resist.
Because you're not kidding. That's got to be. Wow.
Well, hold on. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through the figure listing here real quick and see if we can figure out which one this is.
There's a figure listing? Where? Where do you see this?
On the left side.
Oh,
I hope US is cleric or something like that.
The
Probably.
steadfast pike.
Yeah.
Where is it? Forward guard? No.
Is there not one on the second page?
No, the second page is the listing of the stores.
Esquire, Brethren, Foot Guards.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing one that's obviously him. Unless he's Magnus Dragonel, but I'm doubting it.
I'm not feeling that.
Yeah, I'm not either. Pretty sure he's not the Valley Elf Cavalry.
Somebody was up way too. He could be the hierarch.
Yeah, the head hierarch, headsman, Amazon captive on stake.
That could be him.
That could perhaps.
Be
you know what? He could be from right in here. The number 43, the Wandering Adventurers. He could be the cleric in the Wandering Adventurers.
Yes,
that could be him.
I am finding that fig. It exists. That's amazing.
All right. So what store was in Wisconsin here at the time? Was there one in Wisconsin here at the time? Yes, of course there was. Stevens Point, Madison.
There's two places that are not there. Yes, Sir Huey's not there.
Right. And you know it's the only place in Canada where they stock this is Quebec, in Montreal, which is very far away from home in Calgary, Alberta.
So let's say we'll say this. That's not necessarily the only place that's stocked. That's the only place that paid a couple of bucks to the armory to get their store in the listings.
Yeah.
So
there were two stores in Calgary that sold D&D stuff, and there was only one of them, Go Fly a Kite on 8th Avenue, Stephen Avenue Mall, that sold the metal miniatures, at least when I was in grade when this magazine was produced.
Jim, when you get a chance, ask your boy Doug. I'm betting he shopped at the Tin Soldier in Dayton.
Wouldn't doubt it.
I could almost guarantee it. I'm just looking through to see where some of the others are that I might have haunted at some point. There's nothing in here from North Carolina or Louisiana. I didn't see anything for Oklahoma either. So there's what do we got out in California?
Louisiana.
San Diego, Santa Monica, Pasadena. Working our way up the coast there. Burbank. Now, this is all...
You figure the company in Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut, knew, and they were just punning, because that's not how you spell hobbyist, right? They're deliberately saying, we're the hobbyist.
I'm sure they were. Dude, it's a hobby full of nerds. Of course we're going to get that joke.
All right. Just going with that.
Good hits and bad misses. Hey, we found our table overload. Not only that, but we found where Task Force Games forgot to get the ad in on time again.
Right.
That's so great.
The fact that it happened more than once, because we've seen that in at least one other episode.
Compliments of Task Force Games.
All right, so critical hit effects tables, edged weapons. So didn't we just have in another issue of Dragon Magazine Gary railing about the fact that critical hits don't exist because D&D is a balanced game?
Correct.
Okay. I was making sure I didn't imagine that.
You did not.
And I love the granularity. Voice box puncher, roll to 67. Voice box puncher, no talking. Get removed. All the knee split, like not just injured the knee, but actually have to come up with a graphic description of the injury suffered to
But notice that 74 and 75 are different.
Yes.
Apparently the knee split is somehow more severe at 75.
This was one of the things that was strangely found. I think the German word is Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
I was strangely drawn to this kind of stuff, not to implement or not to use it, but the fact that there were guys who were spending their time coming up with a critical hits, percent rolls to figure out, the exact form of disfigurement that a character would suffer in this game.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, maybe I'm playing it wrong, or I don't know.
I got to see what some of the fumble effects were here. See, the problem with this is these are certainly fairly gruesome effects, but they're not nearly as entertaining as the one giant set of charts about, like skeleton instantly vaporized, body, crumbles into a pit of goo, use a spatula. These are just gruesome. They're not really entertaining. Uniformity, conformity, or neither. What do we got?
Alignment stuff.
He has set himself up as the final arbiter of fantasy role-playing in the minds of the majority of D&D adventurers by authoring the AD&D project. There you go. I'm not sure his head's recovered to normal size yet. So, yeah, there we go. We'll keep on moving here. Because we're still only on page 38. We need to keep moving. What do we got? The electric eye. So if you want to, I don't have a whole set of code in here for you to type. Here's one that is nice, though. Guess what we've got? We've got a glossary of computer terms.
Back when that was new.
Back when you needed that.
Yeah, when you had to talk about what a byte was and a bit was.
So
did we need to know what a glitch was?
I don't know, but I think the fact that we're defining baud, if we asked kids under 25, maybe even under 30, what baud was a measure of, do you think they'd have a clue?
No. They don't have a clue about what most of this stuff is.
40.
Wow.
I'm doing math in my head. So if you're 40 right now, no, you gotta almost be 40.
Yeah. I just turned 46, and I was in 3rd grade when this one came out. So.
Right, but in terms of baud being part of your life.
Yeah, that wraps up around 97, 98.
Right, and caring what that was.
Yeah.
So you got to add 10 years to that for most kids. So yeah.
35-ish.
Yeah, you got to be at least, I think, 35.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Here's the cassette, a way of storing programs when they aren't being used, just like a regular audio cassette player you may have in your home. Who the hell's got audio cassette players in their home anymore? I mean, I do, because I've got this giant mountain of tapes from when I was in college still hanging out here behind me.
Here's a goodie. Octal. Another way of representing bytes. Base 8 instead of base 2. Yeah, that's real popular.
I'm not sure I've heard the term prom in this context since the 80s.
No, because you don't need it anymore.
No.
You don't need prom anymore.
Yeah.
We came up with hard drives.
Yes. Word, same as byte.
Yeah, RF modulator. Isn't that the thing that Martin the Martian tries to use to blow up Earth in that episode of Bugs Bunny? Like,
no, that's
the
Elodium Q36 explosive space modulator.
That's that. Yeah, that was RF is a close cousin.
Yes. All right. Convention schedule for 1980. Let's go see what we had. Gen Con 13. So you were already there. I like Fringe Con with the PH. That's a nice touch. Special guests to include Stan Lee and George Takei. There you go.
And hey, that would Stan Lee and George Takei were still mobile back then.
that would get me interested right there.
No, but here's my favorite. Rides offered.
Yeah, we've talked about this one before.
But this guy rides needed. Here's my problem with his ad. I am going to Gen Con 80, and I need a ride. Okay, dude, you're not going if you don't get a ride.
Yeah.
I think you need to say, I would like to go to Gen Con 80.
Yeah. You think you're going. I do like this one. We've got Rhinecon 5. We've had 4 others of these at this point, going back into the 70s, and we're having a game convention on Kreuzberg Kaserne in Zweibrücken over in Germany, being run by some military guys stationed over there. That's pretty awesome.
There it is.
And I want to point your attention to, on the left column there, the National Space 99 Alliance Con, a gathering of fans of Space 99 and other science fiction television programs, not including Star Trek, because we can't have those guys in the same room. That's just crazy talk.
That is awesome.
It's based on a plausible reality of the moon leaving Earth's orbit, but Star Trek, come on.
Some gaming included.
Yes.
And here's an interesting one: the husband and wife team, or the wife and husband team, of Kathy and John von Kamp. So yes. Kathy and John, I hope your love of Walter Matthau, and what was his name? Walter Matthau's another guy entirely. Oh, they were the husband and wife team that were the stars of Space 1999.
Yeah, you'd have to look it up.
That's really going to bug me.
I was in 3rd grade. I don't remember. I do like that.
Martin Landau and Barbara Bain.
Yeah.
Martin Landau and Barbara Bain. They were husband and wife back then, and they were the stars.
And because our buddy Mirth will never hear this because he won't listen to this episode long enough to get there, we had 2 conventions in Maine. We had MaineCon up in Portland, Maine, and then in Bangor the next weekend you could go hit the folks at the Memorial Union at the University of Maine up in Bangor there. So you could do back-to-back gaming weekends in Maine in July and August of 1980.
All right.
Check it out, Guys and Gals Hobby, for your Chicagoland headquarters.
Oh, and here we're scrolling down into a design document for an early XCOM research tree. This is where this comes from, kids. This is what we had to do before civilization worked you through a design tree. We used circles and arrows.
It worked. We got there.
Yeah.
Game review of the Beast Lord, game review of Intruder. We're going to keep moving because we're like 80 minutes into this. Yeah. City State of the World Emperor. We are beyond the City State of the Invincible Overlord. This one is also approved for use with Dungeons & Dragons. It's the biggest city-state ever.
It was massive. I do remember it being very massive. Judges Guild.
Yep. All right, the Simulation Corner. John Prados talking about Redmond and Roger on graphics. Everyone has played at least one game in which playing problems result from the physical characteristics of the game itself. World at War. Excuse me.
I
had some Bauhaus stuck in my throat there.
See, here's the problem, despite their fetish for Bauhaus, which I gather they're getting rid of, to be clear, in the reissues. But, we're not talking about something like that. We're talking about games where where it seems like nobody looked at them in print before authorizing them to be printed.
Like black on brown?
Right, or in the case I'm thinking of particularly, bright yellow with a bright red typeface.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's almost not, you can't see, I don't know how well I would have seen them when I was, 13 years old? 14, my God. But it was even worse now that I can barely see, that's not something I'm going to be able to see. But these are 2 guys, just for frame of reference, both these guys are still kicking around and doing video or board game graphics.
No, they're not. Redmond's not.
Oh, that's right. We did lose Redmond. Now that you say that, damn it. Yeah, you're right.
Roger is.
Yeah, Roger is, but Redmond's not. That's right.
Roger's still around doing quite a bit.
When did we lose Redmond? That's right.
It's been several years.
Right.
There are, the the cult of Redmond is quite prolific in the wargaming physical design world, and yeah, sort of we all hate watermarks, but or the Redmond disciples do. I'm okay with some here and there. I do like this note. GDW has done some very fine work for one example, Avalanche Imperium and Operation Crusader games. GDW had a lot of very solid, very usable, very high quality typography and physical design in a lot of their games. They were very well done. So I do think it's an interesting article. People can sort of pause the video and watch. I do like this. Graphic engineering, on the other hand, Simonson describes as involving problems similar to conventional engineering. What's the hierarchy of information that will be presented on the counters in the game? And that's something I'm in a couple of different groups online, at Consim World and on Facebook for different kinds of wargame artwork. And there's a lot that we discuss and we describe in there about, okay, what's you've crammed a lot of information on this counter. What do you actually need to play the game, and what is just purely cosmetic because you want it to look cool? So,
and it's interesting. Simonson says Panzer Bliss was the first time that a graphic artist who was also a game designer injected himself into the design process.
Yeah,
that's and then they go through all the things that we so take for granted that he did. Rivers rationalized to hex sides.
Yes.
Numbering hexes, terrain integrated CRTs, back printed counters, integrated. Think of these things. Somebody had to invent them.
Yeah. The wheel.
Right. That's it. The integrated turn record track and the use of display elements to show a state of being or change.
Yeah.
I mean, those things are, like you say, the wheel. That's not to say that he invented the Maserati or the Lotus, but my goodness, still, that's a pretty impressive list.
Yeah. Where else do we go? Graphic representation of buildings and other terrain at the tactical level in the Squad Leader family of games.
Yep.
So, there's definitely, from the gamer's standpoint, it's certainly a positive development that graphic designers are so active in the search for new and improved arrangements.
Amen.
And a quote from your boy Kevin Zucker. So, I know Kevin Zucker keeps talking about designing a game without counters.
Some say he already has.
Well,
and then we get up front.
Right. Yeah, and of course, these two guys, McGowan and Roger and Redmond, they're the guys that did Sniper, which have those orthogonal.
Yep.
That map, right? Which I thought was crazy. It was great, beautiful looking map at the time. When I remember playing it.
And it is. It's a great game. I still have that sucker. Although it took me forever to. That was one of those games that fell into the. I was really young and could not wrap my head around it for years.
Yes.
I kept coming back to it, trying to figure it out, and it took me well into probably my 20s to really nail that one down. Yeah. But I'll say, Zucker's the guy who also gave us games like Struggle of Nations with the itty-bitty hexes.
And the counters that didn't fit into them?
Yeah, and the counters that overlap. Just, no, this is the actual frontage of the division as it advances. Kevin, stop. Please stop.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
Grant, don't turn the page. Don't do it.
Oh, more anti-paladin. Oh, and there's Gene Simmons with a sword.
It's that chart. It's the chart for the anti-paladin.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You know what? I'll tell you, from a distance, what it looks like is a wave sort of crashing to the right side.
It looks like it's falling to the right. But it doesn't line up.
No, it's... that's hilariously bad.
You can't use this chart.
It still hasn't matched the gold standard of bad charts, which was our Traveler chart with the spaceships, but God, this is close.
Because
this is salvageable only in that you could grab a pen and sort of draw a line down between the columns to sort of get them back in line a little bit.
Oh, yeah. How are you going to do that with 5?
No. You lose it after let's see, column A, the second column A. Yeah,
There you go. Yeah, do that
together.
with do exactly what he's talking about. You can't
Once
do
your
it.
character, once
Well,
your
no,
character
I think
hits
you could.
level
You've got to
3,
sort of draw the line here and then come back, and then for this one you draw the line over here and then you got to come back. I
Okay,
think you
smart
can
guy.
do it.
My experience level is 11. What's
Yeah.
my poison type at 30%?
At 30%. Okay, so
Yeah.
hold on, but here's what we've got to do. We're counting over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A. It's D.
Does it look like that?
No, but I answered your question, and I'll bet I did it accurately.
That's awesome.
See, and yet we have a good table here. Jim is not going to enjoy the irony that the one legible table we have is the level titles for the anti-paladin.
Right.
I sure don't.
Oh,
he's
see,
a
and now there's a list of good names instead of anti-paladin.
Agreed.
Malefactor, Hellraiser. Those were I would have played a Blackguard. That's a perfectly good name.
I kind of want to play a dastard.
I will tell you, is it just me or are the level names cooler at the lower levels?
Yes.
Villain of the deepest dye.
Yes.
Just as opposed to those lighter shades of dye. Villains of the lighter shades of dye. Or villains of the pastel dyes.
Right. It's just off.
Villain of the plaid.
Yeah. But yeah, because then, now you're super powerful, you're utterly mighty, and there's like, oh, well, my lord, you were once a Hellraiser, and then a dastard, and a villain of the deepest dye. What are you now? Anti-paladin, 14th level.
I am but a fiend.
Boring.
Yeah. IDDC 2, the new rules. So it's the dungeon design contest. We're not going through the rules. If you didn't enter by now, you're not winning.
But a note on this Dragon of the Past. You guys reviewed one of the issues that had a module called the Halls of Baldur, which I think was the winner of this contest.
That's correct.
Yeah, we've had a couple of contest winners in a few of the different issues because when they would bring the dungeon design contest back around, the different adventure design contests, they'd give you a couple of different categories to enter. So you had mid-level ones and low-level ones and high-level ones and indoor ones and outdoor ones, and so there were a couple of different categories, and they had winners for all of them. So,
still pretty cool.
All right, we're freeing some hostages from automated simulations. So, ask your dealer or rush $19.95 for cassette or $24.95 for TRS-80 or Apple Disc to us. Please add $1 for shipping and handling. Be sure to tell us if you have a PET 38 32K, a TRS-80 16K, or an Apple 48K. Or call our fantasy line toll-free. Not many fantasy lines were toll-free back then.
I was going to say, I was just about to say, that's a whole different number.
And it is interesting that women, even in the future, are still mostly underdressed for combat.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, Jim, it has taken us 90 minutes and 50-odd pages, and we finally found a bad paste-up job here with dreadful transparencies.
Oh, yeah.
I've been kind of half keeping an eye out for it. It's taken us a while to get to one. We finally have one with the ground squid.
There it is.
This is the Sarlacc. Now we know where George Lucas stole it from.
There you go.
Dragon Mirth. We got all of one cartoon for Dragon Mirth. Let me guess, Chaotic Evil, right?
You're going to get some more here shortly.
Inert weapons or business as usual. Hold on. Trying to scooch our way over here.
Again, the time and effort it went into creating that bolt-action, semi-automatic wooden shotgun thing. That's when I knew I was in a different world. No one who ever played Risk drew a picture of something like that in this much detail.
Amen. You are right about this.
All right, so what 8th grader won the Phineas Fingers cartoon contest here?
Right.
Take the fantasy trip.
There it is. I am in. I don't know if you've seen this. The Kickstarter folks, Steve Jackson got the rights back last year.
Yeah.
And we are now in. He is over $200,000. These are booklets, people.
And unlike up front, you're actually going to get them.
You are getting all of this. Although it's interesting, This is so beautiful. You're getting melee, wizard, in the labyrinth, which he never wanted to split up. That was metagaming's decision. So you're getting advanced wizard, advanced melee, Tolankar's lair. The thing you can't have, because they haven't screwed down the rights to it, is Grail Quest.
Yeah.
Right.
You cannot have Grail Quest. I have it, but it's, apparently they're still trying to get it as part of this. But this sucker is taken off, and yes, I damn well did buy the full-in option where you get the beautiful hand-illustrated melee and wizard maps, except now they're giant play mats.
Yeah.
They're the neoprene mats.
Well, so, because they don't have to fold them up to fit in a tiny little tuck box anymore.
That was exactly my point, is that, once again, Steve Jackson has taken his game that started out as a $5 tuck box, and he's turned it into this huge thing. This is now 38 years later.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
He hasn't gone full ogre on it yet, but, we're getting there.
I couldn't. I'm so amped to play the fantasy trip again. It probably will not be anywhere near as fun as I remember it being, but I am in.
Don't let that stop you. The traditional Martian medals upside down. And so this was the back cover. And what we have here is picking up with the missile mission. This was the insert in the middle. You'll notice that the page numbers change now. So this was our top secret mission that was in the middle of the issue. And so they had printed it with its own page number so that you could remove it from the centerfold and keep it as its own separate item. Of note, the artwork in this one's actually decent artwork. It's like they actually spent a little bit of money on. I guess this Raup, whoever this Raup guy is, actually exhibits some artistic talent, unlike much of the other artwork we've had in here. We got a couple of Russian agents floating around, Tchaikovsky, Kalenko, and so we've got
Russian
Chinese agents.
Chinese.
Huh?
Yeah, very quickly. Bought, and we played the module that came with it, which is Spreckenhaltstelle. Isn't that the name of it?
Oh, yeah. Spreckenanhaltstelle.
Spreckenanhaltstelle, yeah. And but we played that, unfortunately, like we played most Dungeons and Dragons games, which was kick open a door and kill things. And what is a Thompson machine gun but a wand of automatic missile fire? And what is White Phosphorus but a fireball spell that can be used by anyone? So and of course, if you look at that map, spoiler alert, 35 years old now, spoiler alert, there's an underground dungeon where you walk down hallways and look for secret rooms and stuff like that. So we had no clue how to play that game, and it was mayhem. We just shot everything up. And the weapons list was much more interesting. Broadsword, longsword, rapier. That wasn't as interesting, quite frankly, as Uzi, AR-15 with, underbarrel grenade launcher. That stuff was cool. So we made a mockery of that first mission. And this was the first mission that I played, probably because it was DM'd by a guy that at the time was in university, where we actually played a top secret mission like it was a top secret mission. And we got it for free in this magazine, or for, as an add-on in this magazine. For me, this was that turning moment where I was, oh my God, this is what a different RPG experience totally could have been. And so when I saw this article, I was like, oh, there's a spot in my heart for this one. And I think it took us maybe only an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to get through this, but it was nicely well done. I think there's still not that much stuff that go. It's taken us a little while to get back to this stuff. Local game clubs have D&D adventures, which are basically, go into a castle, a mansion of 10 rooms and beat the crap out of stuff. And but it's interesting to look back on this to say that this was the beginning of these, short, compact missions that you could kind of do in one setting.
Yeah, it's Wednesday night D&D encounters.
No, that's a great question. To me, the first time I ever hit on the concept, when I heard it expressly said, was the introduction. I was in very, very early to Shane Hensley's Savage Worlds.
Yep.
In the play test, where he said, we've got to change gaming. Because here's the guy that invented Deadlands, right? So he knows complex games, he understands complexity, but he said it just doesn't work anymore. And he specifically built Savage Worlds to be, as he says, fast, furious, fun. One night, get something done, have an adventure, kill a big guy, and feel you did something.
Yeah.
And that you weren't going to do it for many days. But you're right. I have played this adventure. Now that you've mentioned Sprechen Anhaltstelle, which was, I kind of did the same thing you did.
but everybody did.
Hey, monsters!
Yeah, everybody did that because that was the paradigm that we all understood.
Right.
Right.
A drunken sailor is walking down the hallway.
Right.
Open up with the Uzi. Like,
Yeah.
That won't cause any problems at all.
A wandering monster, a drunken sailor walks by.
Yeah. And so, but what a great question. When did we first see a pushback, is this it, this early, to someone deliberately saying, we're going to put out something that's bite-sized, that can be quick and fun. And obviously, like you say, something like Top Secret, which is about super spy people jumping into a situation and doing something that lends itself to it naturally.
Jim, we have that answer. It was 3 pages earlier. It's right there.
Oh, that there, yeah. So I was curious, Byron, did you play the Fantasy Trip?
We played Melee a lot. We didn't actually. I don't even remember if we had. Well, we played Melee a lot, a little bit of Wizard, but I don't remember when. Like some of those other, like the Death Test. I remember those being very. There was only one store in Calgary you could get that at, and I remember we had Death Test 1, and I think one of my friends bought Advanced Melee, but in the Labyrinth we didn't see that. Up until it took. I probably bought that when I'm going to say 5 years after this magazine was released. Just because it wasn't a huge audience for this kind of stuff back in the day. And we didn't live in a large, the gaming community was quite small. And there wasn't, why would you stock it? If you were a hobby store, why would you stock this stuff? No one was going to buy it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Little Generals in South Center was a model store, and they brought in some of this stuff. And when it started picking up was probably 19, I'm going to say, probably 80, 83, 84, 85. So that's when they really started realizing, we can sell stuff to geeks.
Yeah, no, I enjoy the fact that next to Tolan Carr's lair it says, more coming. Well, actually, no, there will be nothing coming. This will be it for 40 years.
Yeah. All right, guys, we got to pull the plug on this because we're beyond the 2-hour mark of this evening. I know that's not all recording time, but we are way past our normal timeline, and somebody like me has to go back and edit all this together. So this was a little fun. This was interesting.
It was an honor and a privilege to be invited in with you guys.
You're just
it was great. It was absolutely great to have you along. It was a ton of fun.
I don't know. It kind of resembled a hostage situation, but
Yeah, no, this was. I always talk about this was. I can't imagine a sub 100 dragon that I don't love. But even with Mr. Bachman here, this was a great episode, and I loved going through it.
Right. Well, spoiler alert. Issue 43 of the Dragon, because I did look ahead in one of the. I think you guys may have talked about issue 43. Someone actually wrote my soul for issue 39. I think that's a little strong, but that's what they wrote.
Wow. All right.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
All right, guys. If you've made it through this whole episode, we appreciate you sticking with us, and we're going to say goodnight at this point, and we'll do this again another time.
Take care.
Good night, all.
And